Y'all, it's David Ducker coming back at you, and today we're going to be talking about sci-fi economics, space economics. A lot of people in a lot of settings don't seem to understand the tremendous force of gravity. Getting anything from a planetary surface up into a zero-G or low gravity environment, up into space itself, requires a tremendous amount of energy. Unless you're running a setting where energy is unlimited, this can cause a lot of problems. Now, a lot of settings, of course, just say energy is unlimited, and they've solved that problem that way. But you can make, I think, a more interesting and more nuanced setting if you follow some real physics and have limitations instead of having unlimited cosmic power. So this is my economic model when I run space opera settings. So gravity is your enemy. So low gravity is your friend. What do we want? Resources. We need for those resources manufacturing as well. All of these things can take place in space. So you can mine asteroids. The lowest possible gravity means it's the easiest possible mining environment. And you can process these materials in space simply because to move them back down to a gravity well, process them, and then move them back up to send them off and sell them, that can require a tremendous amount of energy. Entering the atmosphere and coming in requires energy as well, because you don't want to come in as fast as gravity wants you to come in. You would all die if you just fell in and smashed into the ground. Your goods will be ruined. You will be ruined. You don't want to do that. You need to slow your descent somehow. That requires energy. So processing these goods on a planetary surface in a gravity well, probably a bad idea economically speaking. So you want to process these goods in low G, in zero G, either in the asteroid belt or a space station or a low G world, a small planet, planetoid, a moon, something like that. So in my games, a lot of the action, the commerce, is going to happen in zero G. You're going to try not to go to a planetary surface if you can help it. Large corporations don't want to go there. And I mean, pretty much anybody doesn't want to go there just because of the amount of fuel and energy it costs, and because landings are risky and takeoffs can be risky as well compared to the relative safety of normal space travel. So that's one thing from the real economic perspective, goods and services. But let's talk about the human perspective as well. What do planets have that space does not have? And that is an atmosphere, a biosphere. So on planets, that is where you have your food. And that is where you can support very large populations cheaply. Can you have populations in space? Absolutely. Especially with something like an O'Neill cylinder. Will it be as cost effective as just a planet that basically maintains itself? No, probably not. So for large populations, you want to establish these planets. And to feed people, you want to establish these planets, biospheres. Now, most planets, of course, are not fit for habitation right off the bat, so you have to terraform them. This would be a big industry in the future. In my space opera settings, terraforming is a huge industry. Finding the planets, processing them, and then populating them. Now, of course, ownership of the planet can change many, many times over during that whole process. So what are our terraforming methods? Current science suggests the most efficient way to terraform a world is asteroid bombardment. It doesn't have water. Find a mostly water asteroid, drop that down. The atmosphere is too thick. Send in an asteroid to blow some of the atmosphere off. If you hit it at the right angle with a big enough rock, you can do that. and it's cost effective because the asteroid just has to be moved. If there's a planet whose atmosphere is too thin, you can hit it with a smaller asteroid or many asteroids on different angles to throw up dust, create an artificial greenhouse effect to thicken the atmosphere up. And of course, as I said, chemical changes, adding water, adding hydrogen, whatever you need to add, hopefully you can find it in an asteroid and drop it down. So that would be step one. Use the asteroids as much as possible because they're cheap. Step two on your terraforming might be to set up some atmosphere processing plants, to set up some, if the planet doesn't have one, then you'll need to set up a magnetosphere plant, for lack of a better word, an artificial magnetosphere, a magnetic shield around the entire planet. So basically you'd need a very, very high static charge, positive charge on one pole, very low charge on the other pole, and you'll create this magnetic bubble for the planet to rest within. Magnetosphere is, of course, very, very useful for life. If you don't believe that, just compare Earth, which has a great magnetosphere, to Mars, which has no magnetosphere, although it might have once had one. But without the magnetic sphere, the atmosphere has been blown off into space. Nothing's there to hold it in, and nothing's keeping the electromagnetic rays out. It's very important to have that magnetosphere. So that's what you need, the atmosphere, the magnetosphere, and the asteroid bombardment and the artificial generation of such, the magnetosphere generating plants on either pole, will make the world habitable in this sci-fi fantasy space opera setting that we're talking about. Will that be the way it really happens in the future? Probably not, but at least it's based on real science this way. And we do have artificial magnetic shield generators now. The problem is it's the size of a building, and the field it generates is like that big. It's very new technology, but it's something we can extrapolate from. So we've got the planet fit for habitation. Next step is create a biosphere. Plants, animals, these things which will maintain the atmosphere for us and which we can then exploit. And once it's planted, if it's been managed properly, it's self-maintaining. The forest will take care of itself as long as we start it off on the right course and don't do anything to mess it up. It's self-regulating. It's cheap. It's cheaper to have a planet that has a forest that maintains itself rather than plant a giant orchard, but we have to maintain it. That could actually be much more expensive, and you wouldn't get a lot of the benefits of protecting the atmosphere to keep the planet habitable for humanity. So you need to create this biosphere, starting from the bottom with algae, with fungus, with grasses, with plankton, and then moving up from there and building it so that the planet is self-sustaining and you don't have to maintain the atmosphere yourself. The atmosphere will maintain itself. So that's because that's the most economically feasible thing to do, to create something that takes care of itself. It's cheaper than you taking care of something constantly forever. And a planet is a long-term investment, hopefully forever. It's something that, generations of your family, 100 generations, 1,000 generations could be enjoying and looking forward to. So that's what planets are there for. And that's how they would have to look. They'd have to be clean. They'd have to have biospheres that we don't mess around with, because we paid to put the biosphere in there. So maybe now we'll appreciate it, unlike the original Earth, which we didn't pay for the biosphere, so we don't mind destroying it until we start to destroy ourselves. But that's another problem, another issue. So this is the dichotomy of my space opera setting. You've got space itself, asteroids, small moons, planetoid space stations, which have mining and industry, and then you've got the actual planets, which have a large population and your service sector. And of course, you can certainly exploit the planet, especially for those biological necessities for wood, for plants, for meat, for grain, for all kinds of things that space does not have. But anything space does have, it's much cheaper to mine it in space. So anything like water, gold, um, any kind of mineral, anything that doesn't need air to breathe in, space is much better for that. Which of course is why whenever there's an alien invasion movie and they're looking for gold or water, and those two seem to be the two major ones, it doesn't make sense because there's a huge amount of gold in the asteroid belt, and there's a huge amount of water in the asteroid belt, and you don't have to fight gravity to get it. And of course, in the case of an alien invasion movie, you don't have to fight us to get it either. It's just there. Look, you want water? It's right there. It's in the asteroid belt. Go grab it. And I've heard people say, oh, well, liquid water is different. I'm like, no, it's not. Just take the solid water, move it closer to the sun. You've got liquid water. It's amazing. You don't have to fight gravity and invade the Earth for it or anything. But a biosphere, that is valuable. That's something worth fighting for, worth protecting, which is why you probably wouldn't see a lot of pollution because they paid for the environment, so they're not going to destroy it. That doesn't make sense. Not to say it would never happen, but it probably wouldn't happen often. It would be something you wouldn't want to happen. Not that we want it to happen now, but there's a difference between malignancy and indifference. And when indifference starts costing you money, that becomes a malignancy. Whereas in the real world, we have the tragedy of the commons. Whereas indifference does not become a malignancy, and we're destroying our atmosphere because of it. But that's pretty much all I had to say about the economics of space travel and of colonization. What I think it would look like is a lot of industry in space and a lot of the service sector and anything biological going on these larger planetary bodies. So let me know what you think about that, what your system is. Especially, I would love a video response because I love hearing about new sci-fi settings. There's a lot of fantasy settings out there, but there's not as many sci-fi settings out there, especially not that are based on real science. Even if it's extrapolated to a large degree forward, at least the base was real science. And ones that actually care about detail and nuance instead of just hand waving and saying, oh, it works because super technology. Because super technology is something we don't understand, and thus there will be confusion arising because of it. There will be questions asked that have no answer. Your setting will fall apart because of this. Or you'll turn into Star Trek Voyager and reverse the polarity of everything so that the plot is destroyed. But yes, the comments below. What do you think? Video response. What's your setting like? And until I see you again, good day and good gaming.